joy needs this character sadness. And I really believe that part of joy is allowing yourself to experience the emotions that so often we think we shouldn't feel, is being okay with it and not judging ourselves for it. I think you live a life of finding joy. And the second you say you found it, then all of a sudden life is going to go, no, keep looking for it. And it's this life of looking for something that's good, even in a life that might not be perfect or hard or easy and all of that. And it's just being willing to be grateful for your experience on this planet.
Some things work out, you know what I mean? And some things don't. But the point is, I'm going to keep trying new stuff and trying new things because I don't want to live in that regret. And even when things go wrong or they don't work out, I have joy in my heart because I know I gave it a shot. I tried. And failing, as hard as it is, the fact that I tried and that I gave it my all, the joy makes up for the pain of that failure. Hey everybody, welcome to another week of the Inspire Sessions. I'm so thankful that you're here. If you're a fan of the Mel Robbins Show or the Diary of a CEO podcast, you're going to love the Inspire Sessions. So please, wherever you're watching this, make sure you subscribe and share it out. That way we can reach anybody and everybody out there who needs a message of hope. Also, make sure you visit benfisherinspires.com to stay up to date with new episodes. My heart is really just filled with joy at the opportunity to meet Rachel Martin today, our guest for the podcast. She's just an amazing person, a best-selling author, a blog writer, a badass mom, a social media influencer, a business mentor, a just all-around amazing person. The list goes on. So I just feel blessed to have this opportunity, and I know you guys are going to love this conversation, so stick around. But first, let's just have a really quick word from our sponsors. Taking the first step to overcome addiction is always the hardest, but Better Addiction Care makes it so much easier. With the free 24/7 helpline, they connect you with the top-rated treatment centers all across the nation. So no matter where you are, help is available, and you're not alone. Real help is just a call or a click away. Visit betteraddictioncare.com. No judgment whatsoever. You're not alone. There's people out there who want to help you. People who have been through what you're going through. All right, let's get into it. Hey, Rachel.
Hey, how are you? Ooh, cool set.
Can you hear me all right?
I can. Can you hear me all right?
Can.
Okay.
Good to see your face.
Yeah, yours as well.
I can't tell you enough how thankful I am to have you here. You've been such an inspiration to me, and for longer than I even knew. And remind me to tell you about that here in a bit. But you're such an inspirational person, and it's a big reason why I wanted to have you on here. Obviously, the Inspire Sessions is the name of the podcast. You've been on Good Morning America. You're a best-selling author, a business coach, a successful blogger, a social media influencer, a badass mom. The list keeps going on, right? And I just, again, can't thank you enough. So thank you.
How are
you doing?
That was beautiful and very kind. I'm unbelievably grateful for those words. And I especially need to play back the part about the mom to my kids. Look what it's called.
Please do. Yeah, take it to them. And I can keep building you up too if you need help in that arena.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
My kids are getting to the age, especially my daughter, where it's like she rolls her eyes at everything I do. So I need all the help I can get in that arena.
It's just a phase. That's what I say all the time. It's just part of the journey. So doesn't make it easier.
Right. You always think it's going to get easier too. It's like, oh, if we can just get through this, the terrible twos, it's going to be easier. If we can just get through, this season, it's always like, it doesn't ever get easier. It changes. Mm-hmm. And the hard becomes a little bit different. And in my experience, at least, I guess I can't speak for everybody, but it's always just like a different kind of hard. And right now we're going through, my daughter's 10 years old, and we're going through a very specific season of hard with us moving from Cincinnati to South Carolina and her trying to acclimate herself to new friends and all of that. It's just, it's difficult. So I'm excited to hear more about you and, you being a mom and how joy plays a role in that. I know I definitely want to get into the topic of joy
Hmm.
with you a little bit later. I want to spend some time just kind of getting to know you
Okay.
a little bit better. I know you just released a book.
Hmm.
I don't know if you want to just start by telling me a little bit about what is this new book about and how did you come about it?
All right. Well, yeah, I released a book. It's Get Your Spark Back. And with all of my writing, anybody that knows me, gets to know me, knows that the writing mirrors my life experience or my life's journey. And I always have tried to write in such a way that it may be my story, but something within it is a universal truth for somebody else. And they can go, oh, aha, I see that. And that inspires them to do the great things that I believe people are destined for. And if anything, I've always said that I feel like I'm a spark of hope or joy for people. And I open the door for them, for the possibility for them to do the work. And Get Your Spark Back it's my third book, and the idea for it actually came from my own journey in 2020, 2021. I was kind of in one of those low places, like you and I talked about with parenting. You get those, like with life, it's a wave, and I was in the contraction part of life. And when you're in the contraction part, I've discovered versus expansion, which is like promoting the book and it growing, most of the ideas for what I need to write come to me, even though I don't know it. And I had gone through this journey 15 years ago. I was in a really dysfunctional marriage, unhealthy, and I had extricated myself from that, started my business, expanded my business, fixed my finances, because that's a huge part of my story, and was happily remarried. And all of a sudden, I remember being like, I don't know who I am anymore. I so resonated with this warrior person that had to get out and was scrappy, and the kids were growing. And I remember being terrified. And I told somebody it was like being lost in the woods and I don't know where to go. And I set out on this journey unintentionally. And that journey was basically this reigniting of my spark. And it was figuring out who I was again. And the process unfolded throughout a year. That was a year where I decided I was going to run, which people always laugh about. I decided I was going to run 1,000 miles that year. And in that journey of the 1,000 miles, literally step by step, I started to unpack who I was. And in that process, people, my readers of Finding Joy, started saying, how do I get my spark back? And they could see that reblossoming, that stepping into who I am now, and coinciding with the pandemic, where I think so many people, the life hit the brakes. And then all of a sudden we were left with like, well, what do I do next? It kind of was that process for me. Like, here I am at midlife. Now what do I do? And it was the process of not only finding the spark again, but keeping it going.
I love that. I typically do a lot of talking on these podcasts, but I feel like I really just want to sit back and listen to you. That was so amazing, just the explanation of that book. And I want to explain a little bit about what I said earlier, that you've inspired me and I didn't even know it.
Mm-hmm.
You have this quote, and I know you have hundreds of quotes that are popular and all over the internet, but there's this one that sticks out to me, and it's the one I'm going to read it here. Sometimes you have to let go of the picture of what you thought life would be like and learn to find joy in the story you are actually living. That quote's like, it's gone uber viral for a bunch of different people, but it's attributed to you.
Mm-hmm.
You wrote that quote, and I think that's amazing. And I'll tell you, when I started doing videos on my social media pages, I would find popular quotes like this that weren't necessarily attributed to people and sometimes attributed to people. And I would make cute little videos with them. And one of them was this quote. And I didn't realize that it was you when I first reached out to you. And then I was looking through some of your stuff to learn more about you. And I'm like, oh, that's actually Rachel's quote. That's so amazing. So you've inspired me before I even knew you were inspiring me. And now, like, I've been following you and I love everything that you write on your blog. It's just so amazing, very amazing. And I just recently wrote a book myself. Maybe you can help tell me how I can sell it, because I wrote it, but I don't know how to do business side of things with it. I mentioned your quote, though. It's funny because I've written a lot of quotes since 2019,
Mhm.
and many of them have gone nuts. They've gone viral, but there's no way to attribute it back to me. And I remember like the first time it happened with this quote. You may have seen it. It's something along the lines of, I'm proud of myself for not being fake. I'm difficult sometimes. I may have a few screws loose, but I'm 100% me.
I love that.
That's basically the gist of this quote. And I wrote it, posted it on my page, got thousands of shares, and then all of a sudden everybody else started posting it. It's never attributed back to me. And it's like, I remember having this feeling in my gut of just like being upset about it at first, but then coming to the realization of like, as my quotes get out and they reach people, the point is to bring hope, right? So I
Right.
don't necessarily need it to point back to me. And I'm curious if you've had that same experience where you've seen some of your original writings just blow up on social media and that you don't see your name underneath attributing back to you. Do you have any certain feelings about that?
You are hitting the tender spot of us social media writers and people of this day and age. Many things, many. I mean, I can go back to, I've been writing online since 2008, and it's just been a constant of what I believe an unfolding platform that nobody knows variables and the limitations with. I always go back to the kids would have projects at school and they would say, just grab some pictures from Google and put it into your project. And as not just a content creator and a writer, I also teach strategy and audience building and all of that. I would go to these teachers and say, no, they can't do that because that's somebody's picture and there's licensing and all of that. But it's so new. And I remember one time a quote was shared, or maybe it was an entire article, and I wrote back. I wrote an article about it back, and somebody said, well, anything on the internet is free. And I thought, well, you wouldn't go into Barnes and Noble and just grab a book and just take it. And I really think now people are becoming more aware, and I've been strategic about it, knowing that I've on my website made landing pages for the quotes and all of that, because I've taught my kids, if you find a quote, just put it into Google, find the author, because many times the one even that you referred to, I would see it as, author unknown. And I thought, okay, at least there was an attempt. But if I did see it shared somewhere and it wasn't, there was no attribution, I didn't have a problem reaching out and saying, hey, thank you so much for sharing my words. I'm very honored about it. Really being kind about it, giving the benefit of the doubt. And as a result of that, I ended up making some unbelievably powerful connections with people because they were like, you weren't angry, you weren't mad, and all of that. And then they would share it. But there is definitely that moment of, it's something that you thought of and then you see it going somewhere else. And it's this balancing act of, for me, it's a lot of letting go. And knowing I can either spend a lot of energy into something that I can't control and not put the energy into where I need to help people.
Yeah.
And so I've just learned to release it as much as I can.
Yeah, I think you're a few stages ahead of me on that, but I'm getting to that point, because I did for a while there. I wouldn't say I lost sleep over it, but it irked me. It was just kind of like, what do you do with that? But also on the other hand,
I'm not saying it doesn't irk
you're
me,
right.
though. I'll be real. I'll be real.
Right. It's just an interesting thing with how social media works nowadays. It is what it is, I guess. And I can't let it stop me from creating. I like that you mentioned that you created landing pages, because I recently just built a website for myself and I'm starting to incorporate some of those original quotes. And I actually started writing another book where it's basically going to be a daily devotional of those quotes. So even some of these quotes that I wrote back in 2019, I'm going to have in this book to where they can be attributed to me somewhere and they're copywritten. Not that I need recognition for them or I want it to be monetized for any reason, but just for my own sake to say, like, that was my original thought. I want people to know that that was me. I want my kids to be able to look back and be like, yeah, my dad wrote that. type thing, especially because some of them are going viral, crazy viral, hundreds of thousands of shares across the globe. It would be nice to have recognition for that,
Yeah. Yeah. I would suggest doing a Google alert for it as well, putting that in. And then a lot of times, my husband, he's an entrepreneur. He does the same thing that I kind of do. And he'll be like, Rach, here's some places where you were mentioned. And a lot of times it's with quotes. And I just go in and I just respond, hey, thanks for thanks for sharing. But it's a strange space because I do feel like it's that kind of, oh, do we monetize it? Do we not? But it also, this is what I feel my calling is, and one of the things that I'm supposed to do in this world. And the only way I can continue it is if I keep putting food on the table, which means that I'm okay with saying, you know what, that's actually mine, but I would be willing to license it to you for this.
I love that. I want to segue to move a little bit back in time to when you got started with your blog. You started finding joy in 2008, if I'm not mistaken. And that was back, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I feel like blogging was kind of a new thing back in 2008. What inspired you to start back then? And did you ever imagine it would turn into what it's turned into today?
Oh, I love that question. So what's funny about your question is all my publicists, they introduce me often as an OG blogger because I really was an early adopter of blogging. Initially, what inspired me to start was I always liked writing, and I had been on Yahoo groups for a long time prior to that. And in Yahoo groups, somebody said, hey, you know what, you should start a blog. And I just observed other people's blogging. And I started out on a site that's no longer even there. It was Homeschool Blogger. And I just started writing and I started sharing, and then people started resonating with it. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And for me, when I started, I was back in my first marriage, and all of a sudden for me, it became a way for me to tap into my own soul. I didn't know it then. I didn't know what was happening. I just started writing, I started sharing. And then people started coming to me saying, hey, would you write this post? We would pay you to share about something. And my first marriage was deeply financially not right. And all of a sudden, it was like this door opened to me that, wait a second, I could fix things. And there was a part of me that, dreamt about it, hoped about it, but I didn't quite see it becoming where it went. But if I remember thinking it would be cool to write a book like that, like it would be easy. But the finding joy process, I tell people all the time, my Facebook page, I started in 2011. And my very, very first post on there, which I'm like, it couldn't have been better, was, I guess I'm going to give this Facebook thing a try. And that, I just want to go back to me that wrote that and give her a hug. Like, way to go. Because that changed my life.
Facebook changed your life.
The courage to give something a try.
Gotcha. So you started the blog in 2008. Like when you moved over to Facebook, did that kind of put gasoline on the fire of that blog, or was the blog successful before that happened?
No, it was successful. I was on Twitter a lot too. And so I made lots of connections with people on Twitter, and I started attending blogging conferences because it was really in the era of appliance manufacturers seeing the power of bloggers being like, here, take a whole kitchen set on us. All you have to do is say our name, because there was just no rules back then with everything. I joke that the blogger gave birth to the influencer, because for us bloggers back then, literally, I would go to a conference and somebody would sponsor me to go pay for the whole thing. And all I'd have to do is put their brand on the back of my business card. It was they just knew there was a lot of power in this type of voice. And so the blog started growing a great deal. I was originally on Blogger, and then around 2013, 2014, I migrated to my own site. But by the time I had migrated, I had had several posts that had gotten a couple 100,000 shares at that point. And I'm people don't know this a lot about me, but I'm a real scrappy, nerdy type person. I was taught to code as a kid, and I hard coded the Facebook plugins into my sight before there was any way to do
Wow.
that. So I like to think I kind of gave it a little nudge.
That's awesome. I'm new to the whole blogging thing. I work for a company where we write blogs for the addiction treatment field. And
Hmm.
it's interesting because, like, right when I got into it, this whole chat GPT thing, it came out in the AI realm of it all. So, I would like to tell you that I don't use chat GPT when doing certain things, but it certainly helps to speed things up when you have a lot of writing to do for companies. But I'm curious
Hmm.
what your vibe is on ChatGPT, on AI. Like, are you using it at all, or do you swear against it? What's your feeling for all that?
Whenever anybody asks me that, I ask them to tell me what they know about Blockbuster. And Blockbuster no longer exists because Blockbuster didn't adapt.
You,
They didn't pivot when they had the opportunity to. They could have been Blockbuster streaming on my television, but it's not. And so I am very hesitant to say it's evil, don't use it. I don't use it for my writing per se, but if I need to say, I could take a article and say, hey, can you make an outline of it or tell me the three main
maybe?
points? There are some really great benefits in it. In the same way that I tell my kids, like they live in a world where this is the tool. And if you don't understand it, then you're going to be behind. So I just would rather understand it, see what the nuances are of it, and then go forward with it because it's not going away. So I don't want to be like Blockbuster. I don't want to go away.
Yeah. And that's basically how I use it. I use it a lot for research, right? So not necessarily for
Mm-hmm.
the creative writing, but if you're writing an article where you establish a lot of facts and you need to incorporate research, it's very great at pulling. You can go find your own articles, medical articles, and then have ChatGPT skim through it to find the actual data that you want, and it just speeds the process up by hours. And it's amazing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's an amazing tool, and that's a great point about Blockbuster. I'm always curious about people who are writers nowadays and like how much they're starting to incorporate it or not, because it's getting hard to tell. I can read something and know very quickly. There's a couple different cues that you can look for to see, but it's getting harder and harder to tell because these apps are getting so good and you can manipulate them in ways to make it even harder to tell. It's a little bit scary, and it's scary for people like you and I, where we succeed by our creative writing in ways, and it's just frightening. I'm curious.
Yeah, it's interesting. It is interesting. Like the little tell, the one I've read something on Substack, like the M dash is a tell. And I'm like, I've been using the M dash for 10 years,
Yeah, yeah,
but I love writing. I love the act of writing. I love the process of writing. And just like I could look at the Grand Canyon in a VR set, it will not be the same as actually standing on the rim of the Grand
yeah.
Canyon. And I do feel like that for the creative process. And I definitely feel like there is an equal pull now to embracing the AI in this part, but also this real longing for the authentic creative and feeling that and understanding that. And as long as we can hold them both, then I think it's a beautiful thing. It's when we start to villainize or say one is
Yeah,
better or all of that, that it gets all
you're
messy.
absolutely right. I love that our conversation just kind of randomly went this way. Cause like my whole thing with this is I love to come in and talk about a specific topic with people just for keyword reasons. That way, if somebody's searching for the topic of joy or the topic of screen addiction, they can come to a
Mm-hmm.
podcast and learn a lot about that one subject. But I love that it's a telltale sign of somebody that you can relate to and you can be good friends with, that you just kind of get lost in whatever topic you're talking about. So I appreciate you entertaining me on the chat GBT stuff. I would love to get into the joy thing. So I want to ask you just the basic question of finding joy. What is it? I know what it is for you. You started it, but like give me just why that name, and where are you at with it now? Like what did it mean when you started it and what does it mean to you now? Finding joy. Have you found it?
That made me a little teary. So the Finding Joy name has got this just unbelievably a believable thread throughout my life, but I didn't know it. I remember coming up with the name it was probably 2008, 2009, where there's that moment when you sit in front of the screen and it says, what's your blog's name? And you all of a sudden are faced with, what is my blog's name? And how do I encapsulate what I want out of this? And during that time, my finances were just like kind of alluded to in the beginning. It was really, really dire. And I felt unbelievably trapped and unbelievably stuck. And I remember driving my oldest to a birthday party and then driving back to my home. And it was January, and I lived in Minnesota in January, and it was probably negative 35 that day. And I'm on a back country road where it's flat and it was windy. So the wind was just, you couldn't tell where the road edges were because the wind was creating that snow over all of the roads. And I was so hot in I had a Suburban at that time, and it was so cold outside. So all these opposites were happening. And I was just sad and angry and just lost. And I heard in my head that if I don't get my act together, I'm going to end up bitter in life. And I remember arguing with myself, like, well, what do you mean bitter? And it was like I had been skirting the line, thinking like I could just dip my toe into joy and dip my toe into bitterness. And I was kind of playing with it. And I realized that not making a choice meant I was making the choice to go down this path, to end up bitter and angry and whatever about life. And I knew in that moment I needed to figure out how to find joy, especially in a life that was claustrophobic to me. And so I went on that journey. I remember typing the name in, and my tagline was a beautiful connected life. And I wanted to find the connections, and I wanted to figure out joy. Well, fast forward to when I moved I'd gone through my divorce, and all these things had happened, and I was moving to Tennessee, or it might have been right before, but I found an old hymnal. So another secret thing about me is I learned to play the church organ, which means people always ask, could you play with your feet? I'm like, yes, I could. And my grandmother was so excited that I was playing this organ because she's this classical musician, and my aunt played, and my other aunt was a composer. And so she bought me a hymnal, and it was one of the ones with the spirals so that you don't have, like if you're a musician, so the pages don't flip. And she wrote in the front of it, and she had died in 1998. So this was probably 2012, 2014 in that area. And she wrote me a note, which I always recommend people do because of this. And she said at the end, may you live a life of finding joy. And I was 12 or 13. And I thought, oh my goodness, this has been my calling since I was young. And people have joked with me, like, haven't you found joy yet? Like, that was the thing. That's the thing. And I said, I don't think you do. Just like you're always reigniting your spark. I think you live a life of finding joy. And the second you say you found it, then all of a sudden life is going to go, no, keep looking for it. And it's this life of looking for something that's good, even in a life that might not be perfect or easy or hard or easy and all of that. And it's just being willing to be grateful for your experience on this planet.
I love that you mentioned that you haven't found it and that you don't find it. I made a video not too long ago, and it was something along the lines of joy is a mindset, because I truly believe that it's not something you attain or get to. It's something that you practice, in my opinion. I think that's a good segue into kind of my next question about joy and happiness and what the difference is. Some people kind of mix up the two, and they think that they're the same thing. So I'd love to hear your opinion on what is the difference between joy and happiness, in your opinion.
So I love that you asked me, because the tagline for my newest book has Reclaim Happiness, which I 10 years ago would have pushed back against. I really would have because with that, and I'll explain why, but to me, joy is a mindset, like you were saying. It's a posture of living. It's a heart that's willing, even in the most dire of moments, to see something good or to just keep pressing on. It's this like life outlook that you would have. Happiness to me is those moments like you run the race and you cross the finish line and your family's cheering for you and you're just happy, and or the sun is perfect and you just feel that goodness. And the me 10 years ago would have really emphasized the benefit of just joy. Oh, you only need that. And then I realized, you know what, happiness is just another human experience that I do believe got kind of a little bit of pushback. Oh, it's kind of selfish to be happy, until I realized that my life is going on and I can coexist with joy and happiness. They're very different, but they're equally beautiful and valuable. And happiness, it's sometimes when we get older, we, especially if we're parents, we push everything into our kids. We take care of them, do all this, and then we become kind of hollow of ourselves. We lose ourselves. We lose that spark. And the happiness is like doing the things that we tell our kids to do. Like, you know what, figure out what you love. Figure out that, because that makes them happy. And that's what the difference is. Happiness for me would be, you know, playing the piano and just my fingers are racing on the keyboard and it's just right. And there can be joy in that as well. It's like there are these different layers and context of life.
So were you learned to play the organ? Was that the first instrument that you learned how to play, or have you been a musician since you were young? Or because I'm a musician, I'm just
I can
curious
take my,
about that. I'm a musician too. I got
oh,
guitars hanging on the wall here. I've been playing music since I was 7.
I was probably 6 or 7, thanks to my parents who enrolled me in piano lessons because that's just what they did. But my dad's side, my grandmother, she played piano. My aunt played piano. Like I said, my other aunt was a composer for organ music, married the choral director for University of Wisconsin. So, I mean, it was just a musical family. And so they taught me I played piano and I was really stubborn. I have this memory of being like probably in 5th grade or 6th grade. You know, I'd have to put on like the practice sheets, what time I would do, and I would fudge it. But my dad found out and he was like, well, I'm just going to sit with you the whole time while you practice. And so me being a little bit stubborn at the time thought, I'm going to play the same song for 45 minutes. So for 45 minutes, it was 2 pages. I can remember it. I kept going and it was so awful. But I remember being like, I'm going to keep doing this. I am just going to spite my dad. And by the time I was done, my dad's like, I bet that didn't go the way you thought it would, did it? Oh. But I always say thanks to my parents for the diligence and the persistence to keep me in something that they must have seen that I enjoyed or I was good at. Or for me, music is an outlet it helps me tap into my thinking. Because there is that period, and because I taught piano too, where when you have a student, they want to play Mozart, or they want to play really fast, but their brain and their hand, that's just not synced up yet, or they don't know enough and they're stuck. And you have to go through that sludgy area until you can get to that place where all of a sudden there's the day where you're like, oh my goodness, you're playing it. And then for me, once that happens, or once I saw students where that happened, then you're off to the races. But you got to go through that 2 to 3 years of what am I doing?
I feel like there's such an amazing metaphor in here between music and joy and learning to play music and learning to be joyful. I'm not fast enough or witty enough to come up with a beautiful way. Maybe you can very quickly, but the way you were just explaining that, kind of sludging through learning how to play this instrument, I feel like with us speaking of being joyful as a mindset, it's something you can train yourself to do. Maybe you can speak on that better than I can.
Yeah, I think there was this book that I had that was like a dozen a day. It was these little piano things that you just keep going back and forth until you got to play like the really long arpeggios and stuff. And for me, the finding joy, especially in the beginning, was very much that little book of, okay, I'm going to play this scale. I'm going to play it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And for me, it was, I'm going to write down 3 things every day that I'm grateful for. I'm going to look for something good. And that was the discipline. And then on my blog on Fridays, because people kind of liked it, I started Friday favorite things was what it was. And it was one of those first little link ups where other blogs would link up to my blog and they would share their Friday favorite things and it actually helped grow my site, but they would share it and be the button and then other people would join in. But I was always like, this is a collective of finding joy, of people who set aside Friday to look for something good. And that to me is the discipline. That is the I am going to stop and look for something good. The best life example I have of that, where I believe the Friday favorites, that real discipline came in, was my youngest son, who's now a high schooler, but he was diagnosed with celiac disease when he was an infant. He was 15 months old. And this was prior to all everybody having gluten-free. This was like pre that. So he's 15 now, and he was just this really, really sick baby, and nobody knew what was wrong. And we had been in and out of the hospital. And finally he was admitted because they kind of knew something was up. And I was in this interim floor because there was no rooms. And I was in there at night, and the snow was falling. And here he is, they just throwing out all these things at this point. And I was overwhelmed. And then I heard his heart rate monitor, just that steady beep, beep, beep. And just, I was flooded with emotion. Like, there was all these parents in that hospital at Children's Minnesota that would have done anything for that regular, steady heartbeat. And I remember I grabbed a piece of paper and I just started listing things in that room I was grateful for. The IV in his arm, the gluten-free bread back then that would hold the door open. I just went through this process. And by the time I was done, it didn't take away what I was dealing with, but it gave me some hope in the midst.
Yeah. So beautiful. The thought of gratitude kind of being an igniter for joy, or some sort of conduit to joy, just comes to mind. It's like the two really work hand in hand. You know what I mean? Gratitude really is something that it's hard not to be joyful, right? When you're counting your blessings, is really what it comes down to. Some you've heard probably quotes like, it's hard to be pissed off when you're practicing gratitude.
It's true. It's true. Now I'm going to add you a counterpoint to that, though, which my first book, The Brave Art of Motherhood, in the middle of it, I gave these excuses. And so here I am, the finding joy person. And these excuses, that whole book is about how to get unstuck. And in the middle were all these excuses that we use to keep us stuck. And one of them I put in there as gratitude, which people are like, what? How can you do that? But I had uncovered that I was using gratitude as a pass for things that I needed to get pissed off about. In other words, like, because the finances were so bad, there was a time where a truck of ours had gotten repossessed, and I just felt humiliated. I felt anger. I felt all this stuff. And then I remember like thinking, well, I should be grateful. And I wrote all these things. And then I was like, no. Then when I wrote the book, I was like, you know what? I shouldn't have been. That was a call to take action at that point. That wasn't something I should be thankful about. And so I always ask people, like, when you write that gratitude list, to look at it with those discerning eyes of, is there something on there that you're using gratitude to stop you from actually taking action on? And for me, that moment when I thought I have to take action was super eye-opening and was like super humbling, because I was the gratitude talker.
I'm trying to process that, because that was such a powerful thing that you just said there. I'm wondering if you can say it in a different way, because I really want to make sure that I grasp what you said there. As far as gratitude, making sure that you're not using gratitude to keep yourself from taking action on something that you need to take action on. Help me to understand that more. I really like that.
Well, thank you. So it's like, for me, I use the gratitude of like, I'm really grateful I could let's go back to that very humbling experience of dealing with that truck. I wrote down like, I'm really grateful that I could get the stuff out of the truck. I'm really great. I listed all these things that I was grateful for something that shouldn't have happened. That moment, that not taking responsibility, that not dealing with something, instead of going back a level and going, you know what, this is a call for me to rise up and change my life or to change the narrative. I accepted that and then looked for something to be grateful in something that should not have been a through line in my life. And that financial issue before that I dealt with, I was covering it with like, oh, I should be grateful for all these things. I could be grateful, which is a beautiful thing. I'm not saying don't be grateful, but I was also saying, you know what, on a deeper level, I needed to step back and change the thing that I was using kind of like, it was almost like I was kind of fuzzing the edges of it versus saying I need to take action on
Yeah.
it.
In other words, you're allowed to be pissed off about certain things,
Yeah.
right? And that being pissed off is a good thing because it tells you something needs to change, right? Yeah.
Or not being the victim. That was for me. I lived thinking, well, this isn't my role. This isn't my job. This isn't what and I just was like, oh, is that? And I just was like, you know what? No. And if you're a believer, if you're not a believer, and you look at that time when Jesus entered the temple and he was angry and he flipped over the
Mhm.
tables. And I do think that in life, there are moments where we have to go, no, I absolutely am going to change what I do. And I refuse to accept that. It's like the stake in the ground and move forward. Is it easy? Absolutely not. Because that's the thing is you make the decision and then you're not, now what? Because you have to go through the sludge. You have to go through that whole, the scales of getting out of whatever you need to
Yeah.
change.
And you can take it a step further and say that, I'm grateful that I have the ability to make these changes in my life,
Absolutely.
So, because there's the saying, there's always something to be grateful for, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I love the idea of not using gratitude as a means of staying lazy in something or staying stuck in something, but rather using it as a tool to propel you forward. Shift what you're being grateful
Mm-hmm.
for, right? If there's something bad that's happening, it's a sign that something needs to change. But take that sign and then say, you know what? I'm grateful that I have the ability and the clarity and the insight to know that something needs to change and I'm capable of changing it. I'm capable of making amazing changes in my life. I love that
Mm-hmm.
so much because so many times I feel like people get complacent and they do stay stuck.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a beautiful
Yeah.
thing that you laid out there. I appreciate you doing that.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, I really do believe. And like if someone's listening and they're like, I feel stuck. I mean, I think articulating I feel stuck is the first
Mm.
step. It's such a bold and risky moment to actually put that on the table. And I really believe that a lot of us feel stuck is because we see the end. We see and the middle, it's messy and it's just kind of gooey. And I give a running analogy often because people will say, well, I could never run. I couldn't do that. And they're thinking, I could never run a marathon or I could never run a 5K. And they're forgetting that they probably, could run to their stop sign. And I tell them, your job isn't to run the 5K today. What if you just ran to the stop sign and then back and then you called it a day? And the next day you ran 5 feet beyond it. And if you kept doing that day after day after day, pretty soon that stop sign is going to be nothing to you. But you have to be willing to be okay with running to the stop sign and calling it progress and saying I ran. It's because we see the small stuff like I'm not making a difference. It's not changing. It's not, but it really is. If you keep at it, you're moving forward, which is why the gratitude I had for me during that time, which is why the book was named, had the word brave in it, was I am so grateful that the me back then was so brave.
It's funny. We're drawing this line between gratitude, joy, and now bravery or courage. I have a question written down here.
Mm-hmm.
It's the connection between courage and joy. Your journey
Mm-hmm.
is full of brave decisions, leaving relationships, stepping into the unknown,
Mm-hmm.
rewriting your story. Do you think courage and joy are linked? Obviously, you do. But can you kind of expand on that a little bit more on how joy and courage are linked, in your opinion?
I was Ooh, that gave me goosebumps. I would love to because I truly believe that on the opposite side of things that we fear the most is the thing that's amazing. So, and it's the fear that keeps us stuck a lot. I have a quote in my house, which is attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt, but it's the one that says, now I'm trying to think of it, how it says every day you should do something that you fear and do one thing that makes you scared. And then I had another one that says, do one thing every day that makes you happy. And my son Eli's like, Mom, you have both in your house. And I was like, I do. And I have realized that so often on that other side, the thing that we're afraid of, that we need that courage to jump or the bravery to jump, is the other side is something that's unknown and beautiful and powerful and brings us joy, brings us happiness. And I don't want to be someone that lives a life of regret, of I wish I had tried. And my same grandmother that wrote that beautiful note to me, I remember her about a year before she passed away talking to me, and my daughter was born, and she was saying, I just don't feel this old. I don't know how it went so fast. And it stuck with me, like it goes so fast. Even though when you're in the thick of it, it can feel like it's agonizingly slow, but our experience on this planet is so short. And I just want to be one of those people that said, she gave it her all. She went all in. And that to me is the courage.
I relate to you so much on that with the whole regret thing. Like, because I am huge on just trying everything and trying new things all the time. And it drives my wife crazy. She loves that I try new things. Don't get me wrong. She loves that I'm, have the courage to do that. But, oftentimes things don't work out. You know what I mean? And maybe it's because I'm just on to the next thing and trying the next thing. But it's really, I do know that life is so short. And I don't want to look back at the end of my life and have regrets and say, man, I wish I would have tried to do that. And I'll use real estate as becoming a real estate agent as an example. I'm no longer a real estate agent. I tried it for about 6 months and I realized it wasn't what I wanted to do. But for years, people, because I'm good at fixing up houses, I understand real estate. They kept telling me you should try it. And I was intrigued by it. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'd be good at it. And tried it and immediately knew, like, I don't like this at all. And everybody, and when I decided, you know what, I'm done with this, everybody was like, oh, but you put so much effort into the classes and like so much time into it and you were going to be good at it. And I'm like, you know what? I learned a lot. And now when I'm older, I can look back and I'm not going to think to myself, what if? I know I tried it and it wasn't for me. And there's so many other things in my life too, like A String of Hope, my Facebook page thing. When I got sober, I started building guitars. That was another thing where it's like, okay, I'm going to try it. And I love it. And I still love it. That sparked this idea of starting this documentary series called A String of Hope that kept burning in my brain. Like, you got to do this. You got to do this. Well, I don't have equipment. I don't have this or that. And it was that fire in me of like, I don't want to be down the road and live in regret that I don't do it. And I tried it. And now it's turned into 2 million followers across multiple platforms. So some things work out, you know what I mean? And some things don't. But the point is, I'm going to keep trying new stuff and trying new things because I don't want to live in that regret. And even when things go wrong or they don't work out, I have joy in my heart because I know I gave it a shot. I tried. And failing, as hard as it is sometimes, the fact that I tried and that I gave it my all, the joy makes up for the pain of that failure and my experience.
Well, I love that you've said, because I have a very similar story, kind of in some ways. Your real estate story is prior to the idea for the other book that I was doing is, and I'm sure you've experienced this, when you have a large following, like the numbers that we have of people that have said, like, I want to follow you. Other people have many ideas for what you could do. And I'm constantly, and as someone that teaches in this world, I teach social media and audience building. So all the people just kept coming up with ideas. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I would try this. I would try that. And I got so lost. And everybody was really had beautiful intentions that I really do believe they're on my side. But I got so lost into what everybody else thought I should do that I stopped hearing my own voice. And it was in that process of running where it was just me against me every day that I actually heard, you need to write. You are a writer, and that's what you need to do. And at that point, even though I had invested a lot of money, time, effort into all of that, it was okay because all of that led me to what I was supposed to do. And it's that moment of vulnerability when we can shut out that chatter and go, you know what? no, that's not what I'm called to do. I'm going to step into this. And still, there's a lesson in it. There was so much I learned in that, and experiences and doors that were opened. And is it what I'm doing now? No, but now I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, or I'm back on track.
Yeah, I love the fact that you've brought up the calling a couple times. That was a big point of last podcast I had too with Sean Donahue. And actually everybody that I've interviewed for this podcast so far, it just seems like the more inspirational people that I meet, it's always based around some sort of calling. They felt called or led to be in whatever work they're in. And it's just amazing because I have a very similar experience. And I feel like I've been called to do many things, and I feel like I've been called to do the things I've failed in, right? And that's why it's such a hard blow when you fail, because it's like, gosh, like I felt called to do that. But then when you look back on it, you realize like it wasn't being successful in it that you were called to do it. It was what you learned through the experience and who you became or who you become through that shaping of trying new things and doing things. So yeah, you were called to do that, and you were maybe meant to fail. And that turns you into the person who's going to succeed for the next time. The next thing that you're called to do, you're going to succeed in it. Or maybe you fail 100 times, but then you get to that 101st time and you blow it out of the water because of everything you learned leading up to that. So I feel like life is a bunch of little callings that you experience if you go for it.
I love that. I love that you said that just idea, because I do believe people get stuck into figuring out their one calling. And I don't think it's one calling. Just like you said, like I wouldn't expect my college student to have decided what he wanted to be in studying college when he was 10. And yet sometimes we're like, well, this is not what he went to school for. I don't know, we're off track. But I don't expect my 20-year-old self to know what I'm going to do when I'm 50, or I am now. So it's like the calling, to me, it's this investing in life and investing in service. It's this back and forth life where you just are willing to adapt and pivot. And every year I choose a word for the year. And this year I was like, really? And it's kaleidoscope. And I was like, that is a weird word. And I just went with it because I learned to trust my gut. But the more I've leaned into that word, the more that I see the duality in life, strength and flexibility, and hard and soft, and all of this, and linear and a kind of global, kind of moving with the flow. And they're both equally necessary. And for me, the calling is just turning it just a little bit and seeing, oh, what about that opportunity? And that's when the nuances open up.
Love it. It's funny. I just looked at our time on any of these podcasts. I've looked at my time, and it's like I'm looking at kind of what I want to talk about in the questions. And a lot of times I'm like, it's only 15 minutes in and I'm 80% through all the questions. And now it's like we're coming up on an hour, and I've gone through like 4 of the questions that I had out of like the 30 that I have written here. It's funny, but it just goes to show like how wonderfully this is kind of flowing. So I appreciate that. I want to hit a couple of these points, and I want to be respectful of your time though. I want to hit some of these and kind of try to stay on the topic of joy. And it's going to be what it ends up being. You know what I mean? We've talked about joy quite a bit on here, so I think we're okay. But I really want to give people something that they can take away and they can use to make their lives more joyful. So rather than me trying to ask one of these questions, I think something that we can focus on, or maybe some steps that you think people can take with your experience if they feel stuck and they don't feel joy, if they think that, maybe they're lost and maybe they'll never feel joy. Help me to kind of orchestrate that. Let's try and give some people some hope and let them know that there is a way to joy. There is a way to that mindset. Help me.
Yeah, I mean, I always say, like, again, if someone's listening and that's the first thing they need to know is you're not alone. Because the most stuck I've ever felt was when I thought I'm the only one that's dealing with this. I'm the only one whose life is a mess. I'm the only one. And that I'm the only one it's like a blanket that smothers. If you're thinking of your joy, your life is that spark, it smothers it. There's no oxygen there. And so I really want you to know you're not alone. And the process of finding joy, it's not a light switch, like you flip it on and yay, there it is. Life is awesome. To me, finding joy, it's, as we've been talking about, it's this discipline and it's this choice that, okay, I'm going to try to do something today that makes me feel happy, or I'm going to do something today that checks something off the list, or I'm going to do something or find something that's beautiful today. And in the beginning, and I still have days like this, it might be that my coffee was the perfect temperature this morning. I really believe that when we look for those grandiose things in life, oh, that will bring me joy, we're keeping ourselves from finding joy. It's when we go, wow, the grass looks so beautiful this morning, or wow, I'm just so grateful I got the opportunity to drop off my kids at school, or all of that is when we start to see the joy. And for me, it's when you start showing up for yourself. And I know that might seem a little bit, oh, well, I don't have time to show up for myself. But in life, and I give this analogy often, is if you got in your car and you had an appointment and it was 28 miles away and your car said, I've got 40, you don't have that much gas. You have only 18 miles that you could go. There's no way you would decide, you know what? I'm just going to risk that last 10 miles on the interstate today. I'm just going to keep going. You would stop, you'd put gas in, you would be unapologetic. You wouldn't be like, well, I knew I could probably make it, because you know it's vital. And in our own lives, taking care of ourselves, taking care of our hearts, our souls is just as vital. And when we give ourselves permission to say, I'm worth it, I am worth investing in my own story, I'm worth finding joy, that's the process. But you have to, and if you're thinking, I don't feel worthy, then that's okay. That's the first step. It's like that process of going, okay, that's okay, but do something good for yourself today. Buy yourself a Starbucks. Don't feel guilty about it today, and just let yourself have that moment. And gradually through time, there'll be more and more moments, but your life it doesn't mean it's going to be like, I would say, rainbows and glitter and sunshine. Life is still this perpetual wave of good moments and hard moments, and joy is the through line in them all.
Yeah, it's so epic. So... Oh, I love it.
Cue epic music.
I feel like, so the things we talked about today, overarching joy, right? Joy is a mindset. Mm-hmm. Joy is in the ordinary. Mm-hmm. Joy is being courageous. Mm-hmm. Joy is finding gratitude. Joy is doing something for yourself. Joy is so many things, right? I think you expressed it so eloquently and beautifully, as you do. I want to leave people with kind of letting them know where they can find you if they don't know you already. I would love for you to just kind of give your billboard, if you will, your Facebook, your books, just kind of tell people where they can find you, because you're such an inspirational person, and I want everybody to be able to find Rachel.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I want to add, and I'll tell you where I am, but I want to add to your list of joy is, if you've ever seen Inside Out, joy needs this character sadness. And I really believe that part of joy is allowing yourself to experience the emotions that so often we think we shouldn't feel, is being like and being okay with it and not judging ourselves for it. I've had to go through that journey myself of like, you know what? It's okay. It's okay that I'm feeling, because joy is just so beautiful, because otherwise you're skirting the line, you're right in the middle. And what I realized on that road in Minnesota was, the road wasn't just bitterness, it was numb. It wasn't feeling. I thought I could protect myself, and I didn't want to live a life of numbness. I wanted to experience life, and that meant I had to feel life. So for people, if you want to find me on Facebook, I'm Finding Joy Blog. You can type it in, you'll see my face. There's a blue check mark because Facebook has verified that I'm actually real. And I'm on Substack as well. I write a Substack there. It's just Rachel Marie Martin, but I write one there. It's a subset of Finding Joy that's called Life All In. And it's really about this kind of place about how do you go all in life? What does it look like? A lot of musings that I have. And then my latest book is Get Your Spark Back. And my first book was The Brave Art of Motherhood. It's really about how to get unstuck and take back your life. And my middle book is Mom Enough, which surprisingly is a collection of all the letters that I've written on my website for the last 15 years. My publisher's like, let's put them into a book because people were asking for that. So that's me.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And thank you to everybody who is listening. And I want to stay connected with you because I just feel like I have so much to learn from you. And obviously, I'm going to continue to follow you and like your posts on social media. But I'll probably bother you on text message too. Like, hey, what do you think about this? Because I do have so much to learn from you. So you're amazing. Thank you so much for spending this hour with me. We'll have to do it again here in the future because I still have like 30 questions to ask.
Finding Joy, part 6.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. So we'll talk to you soon, Rachel.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.